What if the month that delivered you into the world is not a verdict but a training ground? What if the skies did not write your fate, they wrote your workout? If that sounds audacious, hold the thought. By the time we finish, you will carry a compact compass. You can speak to yourself in one breath. I am not my month, I am my method. And we will put that line to a real test before the end, folding it back into 3 lives that could have gone to ruin and didn't. Let's begin with a simple boundary that thoughtful people forget in the heat of hope. This is educational philosophy, not therapy or medical, legal, or personalized counsel. Ancient Stoics asked us to examine our impressions before we obey them. They'd ask the same of anything you hear now. If a practice seems promising, pause, reflect, test it gently, and consult qualified help where the stakes are high. The soul is a long voyage. We don't skip maintenance checks just because we're eager for the horizon. Now to the beating heart of the matter. Human beings crave maps. When the world floods us with inputs, we reach for patterns like a sailor reaches for stars. You were told that your birth month has meaning, maybe not a mechanistic push-pull of planets, but a symbolic echo of season and cycle that whispers about temperament, posture, and recurring challenges. The Stoic question is not, is it true in the heavens, but is it useful on the ground without corrupting your agency? That is our ethical criterion. Symbols can be mirrors or excuses. A mirror wakes you, an excuse sedates you. Our task is to keep one and reject the other. The ancient discipline offers a first principle as plain as daylight. There is a narrow set of things up to you, your judgments, choices, and the actions that flow from them, and an ocean of things beyond your say. You cannot move your birthday an inch. You can move your mind in an instant. You have no vote in yesterday's storm. You can reef your sails today. This is the dichotomy of control stated without incense. We will add nuance, but hold it firm. If a story about your month strengthens your grip on what is yours to steer and loosens your white knuckle around what is not, it is medicine. If it does the opposite, it is poison delivered in poetic glass. Because we live under skies and seasons, let's speak in seasons to honor the spirit behind birth month myth without chaining ourselves to its particulars. Consider the lived physics of the year. Winter compresses light and asks for economy. Spring breaks the ground and multiplies options. Summer expands and tempts arrogance. Autumn cools and clears the field for assessment. These are not commandments, they are recurring contexts. In each context, the Stoic posture is specific. Conserve and fortify under scarcity. Initiate without frenzy under expansion. Hold power lightly under surplus. Harvest with judgment under decline. If you were born when the land was sleeping, you might resonate with restraint and structure. If you were born when the fields burst, you may feel a bias toward beginnings. If you arrived during high sun, magnanimity might come easy, and so can vanity. If you came with falling leaves, precision and pruning may feel like home, and so can perfectionism. Not fate tendencies, not shackles, weights on the bar. Let me translate the core vocabulary you will hear as we move. When I say judgment, I mean the inner label you slap on an event before you even see it. The Stoics called that first inner movement a fantasia, an appearance, which your faculty of choice proheresis either endorses or declines. You think you are seeing reality, often you are seeing your month story. A colleague rejects your proposal and you say, "I knew it. I was born in the quiet months. I'm not a persuader." That is not seeing, that is surrender to a narrative. Stoic training interrupts that slide. What happened is simple proposal declined. The label, "I am not a persuader," is optional and often harmful. Replace it with an inquiry. Which parts of persuasion are up to me? Evidence, framing, timing, relationship equity. That question returns the helm to your hands. We also need to balance the dichotomy of control with a subtler truth. While many externals are not up to us, How we structure our environment is often partially up to us. Ancient counsel about voluntary discomfort was not a fetish for suffering. It was a way to immunize the mind. Short, cold, small, fast, modest bed, deliberate silence so that when involuntary discomfort arrives, you are not a stranger to yourself. Today, that same principle applies to seasonal narratives. If you lean naturally toward winter's restraint, you can deliberately schedule small acts of spring experiments, outreach, risk. If you run hot in summer's charisma, you can structure autumn audits, weekly reviews that puncture vanity and reveal drift. In this way, the seasonal map becomes a training cycle, not an identity badge. Imagine 3 arcs of life, each a sky a person chose to sail rather than be sailed by. The first is a preventable downfall. Adrian believed in mystery more than mastery. Born toward year's end, he loved the story of the introspective alchemist, someone destined to move behind the scenes and conjure transformations others couldn't see. It was poetic and flattering, but he used it like a shield and then a spear. He hoarded information at work, convinced his role was to guard the secrets until the perfect unveiling would earn him recognition. Projects slowed. Colleagues lost trust. When deadlines groaned, he blamed the shape of his soul. "I work in cycles," he told himself. Great work matures in silence. The silence lengthened. A competitor launched a smaller, messier version of his idea and ate his lunch. The downfall was not in the stars, it was in a pattern of judgments masquerading as destiny. Where did the slide become preventable? At the first rationalization. A Stoic mentor would have asked him, "Which of your reasons is testable this week? What's the smallest public prototype that exposes your idea to reality? Who are your partners, and what do you owe them by Friday?" He never asked those questions until the review where he lost his sponsorship. That meeting was a storm he could not control, but the policies he could have adopted, weekly demos, open books with teammates, crisp definitions of done, had always been his to choose. The sea was not cruel. He had left the oars in the hull. The second arc is a delayed awakening. Mira was born when the air was heavy and kitchens were full. She felt at home in caregiving and became a quiet savior for everyone around her. She was the reliable one. The praise fed her, the depletion followed. When her father's health dipped, she moved home without a word and burned down to kindling. By 30, she measured her worth in how quickly she answered requests. When she discovered Stoicism, she misread it at first, imagining it demanded suppression of feeling and total self-sufficiency. That error added iron to fatigue. The awakening came through a sentence she whispered to herself at 3 a.m. over a cup of cold tea. Feelings are weather, commitments are architecture. She stopped using compassion as a weapon against her own boundaries. She wrote 3 non-negotiables on a small card: 8 hours of sleep, 1 hour of movement, 15 minutes of morning pages. She began to say 2 sentences that changed her life. Yes, and here is what I can offer without harm. No, and I will help you find another path. She practiced the dichotomy of control, not as a barricade against love, but as a way to aim love. The rings under her eyes softened. The family respected her for the first time because she respected herself. The third arc is a credible transformation. No miracles, just disciplined redesign. Kenzo came in spring and mistook momentum for meaning. He chased beginnings, new skill, new team, new city. When projects turned to maintenance, he fled. His resume looked like confetti thrown down a hallway. A friend slipped him a copy of a Roman's notes to himself about paying attention only to what is in your power. Kenzo took it as a dare and built a tiny training plan. 1 pledge he would keep for 90 days no matter what. 1 review ritual every Sunday. 1 accountability partner to hold the mirror without mercy. The pledge was humble. Finish 1 thing that matters every day before checking messages. In the beginning, he cheated, then he told the truth about it. The Sunday rituals were boring. Then they became the spinal cord of his week. He learned to use his bias for beginnings as a spark inside a larger architecture that guaranteed completion. He did not become a new person in summer's blaze. He became the same person, fortified with autumn's discernment and winter's steadiness. 2 years later, he led an unglamorous project that kept a hospital's systems from failing in a heatwave. No headlines, quiet heroism. He slept like a stone because his life had a flaw. When we speak of month archetypes, we're really negotiating the tension between poetry and policy. Poetry compresses truth into feeling. Policy compresses intention into habit. You need both. If you sense, for instance, that winter's children lean toward structure, the policy is to extract the virtue and discard the vice. The virtue is reliability, the vice is rigidity. How do you extract? You keep the calendar, but attach it to reality testing. Set your plans in pencil. Surround structure with feedback loops. Every plan must have a review date that asks, is this still true after contact with the world? Reality is the instructor that Stoics considered the ultimate judge. It will erase illusions without shaming you if you let it. If you feel spring in your bones, ideas bloom just by being near paper. The policy is to use initiation as an offering, not a flight. Write down beginnings you will not pursue and give them away to people who will. Treat the surplus like harvest, not hoard. Tie each new start to a small, clear finish line and a handoff. That preserves the dignity of your spark while protecting your life from fragmentation. If you run hot with summer's charisma, practice the old and awkward art of asking for dissent. Give teammates a formal role, the critic who protects the group from your halo. Train yourself to rehearse plans with the most skeptical mind in the room. What would sink this? What would embarrass us in 9 months? If you hunger for autumn's analysis and precision, guard yourself from the paralysis of the last 2%. Finish at 98 and release. If your identity is fused to flawless, you will never serve. Service requires delivery under uncertainty. Practice hitting publish while your hands still tremble, then schedule an iteration. It's time to clarify a philosophical nuance. Ancient Stoicism is often caricatured as a denial of feeling or a worship of logic for its own sake. In reality, those old voices sought freedom from compulsion, not numbness. They aimed at the integration of reason, emotion, and action under the governance of a wise will. They often sounded severe because they were writing to themselves in crisis. They were tightening bolts in a storm. They also warned against superstition, not because ritual is wicked, but because it seduces us into outsourcing responsibility. If a ritual about your birth month becomes a reason to avoid a hard conversation or a neglected duty, you've lit incense at the altar of your own avoidance. But if a poem about winter makes you kinder to your need for rest and sharper in the hour of performance, you have used culture to tilt you toward virtue. There is a further complication we must respect. Modern psychology has taught us that rhythms, circadian and circannual, affect energy, mood, even risk tolerance. Light and temperature play with neurotransmitters. Geography and family shape expectation. Culture amplifies certain traits and scolds others. To be stoic in the best sense is to acknowledge these forces without bowing to them. You may be more patient in cold months or more impulsive when daylight is long. That is not sin or destiny, it is scaffolding. The wise builder uses the scaffolding while remembering the house is his to design. Let's translate all this into the way you move through a day, because philosophy that does not touch mornings and evenings is a theater set. Begin with the smallest possible morning ritual that reasserts the locus of control. Before the news or the glowing rectangle, write 3 lines. What's mine? What's not? What matters? Under what's mine, list the decisions you can make today: 1 conversation, 1 craft block, 1 care action. Under what's not, write the names of people and systems you will not try to steer. Under what matters, pick the one act that, if finished, would make the day honorable, even if the rest collapses. This trains prohairesis, the faculty of choice, to sit in its rightful chair at sunrise. You'll need a midday technique for impressions. The Stoics trained themselves to break the hypnotic spell of first appearances by uttering short names for things. Instead of catastrophe, they would try a layoff notice. Instead of betrayal, an unmet expectation. This is not denial, it is de-dramatization. It prevents the inner storyteller from hijacking your endocrine system. If you're tempted to say, "I was born in the month of warriors, so I confront," name the situation before you lunge. A teammate's delay on a deliverable. Now choose. Do I need confrontation or coordination? Most of what we label battles are really logistics. In the evening, live like an architect, not a judge. Review and design. The evening inventory used by thoughtful Romans went something like this in ordinary words. Where did I act on what was mine? Where did I reach into what was not? Where did I waste myself? What would I try differently tomorrow? Keep it merciful and precise. Learn to forgive your errors without taking away their teeth. You are not trying to win against yourself. You are trying to become trustworthy to yourself. Remember our opening line about the month as a training ground. Let's close the first loop and make it operational. Imagine you keep a small seasonal ledger, 4 pages. Winter, spring, summer, autumn. In each page, you're going to write a one-sentence bias and a one-sentence antidote. If you are a winter-leaning soul, your bias might be, "I over-plan to avoid failure." Your antidote, "I ship small and early to learn in the open." If you are spring-biased, your bias might be, "I start too much to feel alive." The antidote, "I choose one finish per day before I earn the right to begin." Summer bias, "I believe my charm is strategy." Antidote, "I appoint a skeptic and don't move without their critique." Autumn bias, "I refine until the moment dies." Antidote, "I freeze scope and deliver, then iterate publicly." You will reread these at the turn of each month, not as superstition, but as steering corrections. The sky turns, you adjust trim. Let's revisit Adrian, Mira, and Kenzo to see what changed when they shifted from myth as identity to myth as instrument. After losing his project, Adrian made a private vow that would make old philosophers nod. He would never again keep his work in the dark longer than 7 days. Every Friday at 3, demo something to someone who could say this isn't working while there was time to save it. He assigned a colleague the role of breaker, paid in gratitude, not money. He used his fascination for hidden systems as a service to the team rather than a seduction for ego. He still felt the romantic pull of secrecy, but he understood it now as a craving for safety. Safety could not be allowed to run the company. When he launched the next initiative, there were defects. There was also a community around the work that helped repair them. He discovered that mastery is not the same as mystique. Mystique is a costume. Mastery is a practice. Mira's awakening matured into an ecology of care. She learned that boundaries are not walls but agreements, and that the most loving word in the language is sometimes no. She took the 15 minutes she used to spend doom scrolling and gave them to what ancient writers called morning recollection. She would ask, "What roles do I actually inhabit today? Daughter, analyst, mentor, friend, and what is worthy conduct in each?" She practiced what some might call negative visualization by briefly imagining key plans derailed so she could anchor her peace in intention rather than outcome. That made her nimble when her father's appointment moved by a week or her manager changed priorities. Because she no longer defined herself by martyrdom, she became more useful in crises, not less. People came to her not just for help, but for perspective. Kenzo's transformation stabilized because he internalized one dry rule. Nothing counts until it's on the calendar, and nothing stays if it isn't reviewed. He stopped telling himself stories about potential and started finishing small, boring tasks that made bright promises possible. The 90-day pledge became a rhythm. Craft block first, messages later. He rested on purpose rather than in collapse. He spoke one sentence to himself that you might borrow. Do the day you said you would do. It is a sentence made of granite. It does not flatter you, it frees you. We should pause to address a Machiavellian corner without romanticizing it. Power structures exist, incentives shape behavior. The Stoic stance is not naive pacifism nor vengeful cunning. It is clarity about where your leverage lives and courage to use it ethically. If your workplace rewards secrecy and bluster, you may not be able to reform it. You can, however, choose transparency with your circle, document agreements, and say no to timelines that guarantee failure while proposing ones that make success possible. Successful cruelty is still failure. It bankrupts the soul to enrich the ledger. Stoic agency is not a license to dominate. It is a discipline for refusing to betray your principles when fear or glory beckons. You are permitted to be strategic. You are forbidden to become small. Now, a gentle correction to the cultural version of month archetypes that tempts all of us. The lure of categories is belonging without responsibility. We enjoy saying we are builders, warriors, analysts, visionaries, because it grants the warmth of a tribe with the thrill of a myth. Keep the warmth, decline the abdication. The moment a label makes an apology on your behalf, sorry, I was harsh, I'm an April, it has stopped being a mirror and become a mask. Masks block air. If an archetype helps you name a strength to offer, wear it like a crest when you serve. If it helps you name a risk to watch, carry it like a warning label on your dashboard. If it ever tries to defend your worst impulses, throw it out of the car. Let's take the scaffolding one notch higher and speak of architecture. You will be tempted to ask for the perfect routine. That impulse is understandable and doomed. The more fruitful question is, what is the smallest structure that makes virtue easier than vice in the environment I actually inhabit? The answer will be seasonal by design. In dark months, you might anchor your day with bright, warm social accountability, a morning check-in with a friend or team, a standing call that asks what you'll do first and whether you did it yesterday. In light months, your risk might be diffusion, so you anchor with constraints, office hours for interruptions, quiet hours for deep work, a digital Sabbath that is not negotiable. This is not about performing an aesthetic of discipline. It is about making the desired behavior the path of least resistance. A fortress is not built for Instagram. It is built because storms exist. I promised you a payoff you could test by the end. The line was simple. I am not my month. I am my method. How do we test it? This week, pick one situation that you have been attributing to your month story. It might be, I don't speak up in meetings because I'm from the contemplative quarter. Replace the story with a method. For the next 3 meetings, I will prepare one substantive question on paper before we begin, and I will ask it before the halfway mark. That is not hypnosis. It is a maneuver. Watch what happens. 2 outcomes are likely. First, you will discover that your voice does not shatter the room. Competence and curiosity are welcomed even when they are tentative. Second, you will discover data about your real obstacle. Maybe it wasn't temperament at all, but lack of preparation, or status dynamics, or unclear roles. Either way, you have moved from myth to measurement. The sky did not change, your ship did. If you need a second test, try a voluntary discomfort tuned to your seasonal bias. If you hoard comfort in winter, choose one cold exposure. Park farther and walk. Set the shower 1 notch down. Leave the coat for the first block. Not to punish yourself, to demonstrate that you can choose. If you scatter in spring, choose one constraint. No new projects until 2 are closed this month. If you swell in summer, schedule an hour with a mentor who disagrees with you and ask them to tell you 3 ways you are fooling yourself. If you prune to death in autumn, pick one imperfect work and release it by a date written in ink. These drills do not prove cosmic truth, they train human freedom. A last nuance for the scrupulous. Stoic texts are not uniform. Some voices emphasize inner peace, others civic duty. Some sound harsh, others tender. Some distrust emotion, others transmute it. The unifying thread is the pursuit of excellence within moral bounds, achieved by directing attention and action to what is truly ours to govern. When we borrow symbols from other traditions, the spiral of time, the poetry of months, we do so as craftsmen, not zealots. We test, adopt, discard, refine. We do not build prisons, we build practices. So where does this leave you as the lights dim and the mind returns to its private weather? You have a map that will not make you superhuman, it will make you deliberate. It tells you that a label can be a lamp if you aim it at your work, and a leash if you snap it on your neck. It reminds you that power without virtue is loud failure, and that quiet reliability, showing up, finishing what you said, telling the truth will do more for your life than any incantation. It offers a few sentences to memorize when the room is loud. Feelings are weather, commitments are architecture. Do the day you said you would do. I am not my month, I am my method. We close our loops by returning to the beginning promise and to our three travelers. Adrian now demos on Fridays. Secrecy no longer seduces him because service is sweeter. Mira protects her sleep the way a guard protects a gate. Her no is clean, and her yes has power. Kenzo finishes before he checks messages. His craft has a flaw, and that flaw holds other people up. None of them escaped their temperament, they trained it. The month did not change, the method did. If you want a next chapter that deepens this work without mystique, explore the discipline of negative visualization, not as morbid fantasy, but as an inoculation against shock. Imagine briefly the loss or delay of what you hope for, so that gratitude is your baseline and resilience is your reflex. Or explore time as a moral budget, where each hour you spend declares a value louder than any speech. Those practices harmonize with everything we've done today. They are the logical continuation of a life built on agency, boundaries, and steady service. The world will keep telling you stories about yourself. Make sure yours is true enough to endure, kind enough to live with, and disciplined enough to build with. When the month changes, smile at the sky, adjust your trim, and keep the bow toward what you can control. The rest is weather, and weather is for sailors.